Hey, I'm back with another video. It's your girl, Kay. I want to talk to you all about my journey to becoming a professor. I have been teaching at the collegiate level since 2016, and that's a very long time. And I have taught at several different universities. I've taught different classes, and I would love to kind of tell you all about that journey for those who may be interested in becoming professors or just curious about, people's professorship journeys. So, in 2016, I was a graduate student at Bowie State, and I got a graduate teaching assistantship, which basically means that my tuition was paid for, and I also got paid every 2 weeks to do research and other things. And I ended up getting lucky because one of the professors was unable to teach their class due to their full-time work schedule, so they allowed me to teach my first class. Child, let me tell you something. That first class showed me how much work goes into creating a class that is going to engage students, but it also opened my eyes to a lot of students who've had really shitty professors. Like, it was very interesting to see how many students had experienced harm at the hands of their professors. And these students, confided in me in a way. Their fears of having someone new come into the classroom, but also their experiences with past professors and how a lot of the professors that they had were mean to them or talked down to them or really made them feel like they were not capable of learning. And that let me know that if I wanted to get into this profession, I would really have to work hard to dismantle the system that has created this harm towards students, and that I would have to be a professor that actually cared about my students and took the initiative to make sure that my students were taken care of. So after I taught that communications class, it was like an intro to communications class in 2016. I graduated, and then I went back into industry. And while I was in industry, I hated it. I've told you all a little bit about the boss that I had and how he was inherently racist, even though he claimed he wasn't, because I'm not even going to get into that because it's a mess. But I wanted to leave, and the department chair called me one day and was like, I heard you were looking for a job. Do you want to come and teach as an adjunct? And I said, absolutely. So I went back to my alma mater, Bowie State, go Bulldogs, and I began teaching the intro to communications class. And my class was packed. There were so many students in that class. And I learned quickly that it is hard to teach a class full of 50 plus students, especially if you're supposed to be doing like speeches and stuff. So in my class, they did speeches, and I hate public speaking. Like, I like actually speaking publicly, but I don't like public speaking class. I didn't like that class when I was an undergrad, and I didn't really like teaching that aspect of the class when I was teaching it at Bowie. But yeah, so I had a lot of students, very traditional and non-traditional students, and I quickly learned that I had to really scale how much I taught and how much I could get through in each class, because I only met with them a couple times a week, and I had a lot of students. I also learned the hard way that I could not be accepting late work all the way up until grades are due, because then I'm left with like 150 things that I need to grade, and that is not fair to me, and it's also not fair to my students because I'm not able to give them the things that they need. After I taught at Bowie, I got really, really sick, and I'll talk about that in another video about that experience and my chronic illnesses. And I'll talk about that more later on, probably in the summertime. I got sick, and I was still teaching, but I had transitioned to teaching virtually. And it was okay. I was teaching asynchronous, and it was just kind of like me just kind of getting by, because I wasn't well. So it wasn't like I was really engaged with the students like that. So that was probably a time during my career where I felt as if I wasn't a good professor, because I wasn't able to show up for my students the way that I needed to because I was sick. And instead of just focusing on my health, I still pushed through because I didn't want to give up on my students. So it was just a very weird place to be in. In 2019, I got a job at Bryan and Stratton, and we had moved back to Richmond because I was living up in the DMV, and I started teaching there, and I started teaching their learning communities course, which is basically like communications mixed with like freshman seminar mixed with like how to be a good student. And I love that class because Bryan and Stratton has non-traditional students. So I had working people there, I had moms in my class, I had people who had been in different industries but wanted to switch to something else. And it was really fun teaching that class because I love organization, as you all will learn as I do more videos. I have some videos coming up around how I organize. And I love teaching people how to be a good student because I've always been pretty good in school as far as like staying on top of things and staying organized, and how to communicate with professors, how to show up for office hours, just all the things, how to send an email, basically just the ins and out of being a student, which I think is an important class that everyone should have to take, because it really can help shape your experience in college. After that, I continued to teach there, and then the pandemic hit and COVID hit, and I taught some classes virtually, but then I ended up taking off the fall semester because I was working at the abortion fund, which I talked about in a previous video, full time. And when I took that time off, I was starting my PhD program. So I took like a semester off. I was a teaching assistant for 2 classes, and it gave me opportunities to guest lecture. So I got to really play around with my research and then kind of figure out where my research would fit. And I was in the Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies program. Shout out to y'all. And when 2021 hit, I just started teaching, and I loved it. I taught intro to gender, sexuality, and women's studies. I taught women in literature, and then I created my own class. I created a class called Hip Hop, Feminism, and Poetry. It is a very unique class. It's one of a kind. It is my baby, and I have been teaching that class for maybe 4 to 5 semesters. So that would be like 2.5 years. And it's become my signature class. Like, students actually talk about my class on campus. And I hear from other faculty and my colleagues that the students really enjoy my class and they tell their friends about it. And I have people who always want an override in my class. So I was excited to be able to teach something that I loved and something that like wasn't created by someone else. Like, teaching an intro class is cool because you can kind of like craft it to be your own. And I love teaching like intro to gender, sexuality, women's studies. But when I was teaching my communications courses, I didn't have a lot of freedom to like make the class my own. There was kind of like a textbook that you had to use. There was a syllabus that I was already created that you kind of tweaked a little bit. But creating my own class allowed me to create a syllabus from scratch, create a curriculum from scratch, and to pull in any readings that I felt were important about the topic, which is exciting. So I've been teaching that. And then in the summertime, I typically teach women in literature, which I really enjoy because it's cross-listed with English. Most of my classes are cross-listed with either English or African American studies. And in my women in literature class, I usually either teach short stories or I teach a mixture of novels, short stories, and poems. But it just depends on how long my summer classes are, because sometimes my classes can be 6 weeks, sometimes they can be 8 weeks, sometimes they can be 4 weeks or 3 weeks. So it just depends on how long the class is. And then I am currently in the process of creating a new class called Misogynoir in Digital Spaces that I'll be teaching in the fall. And I'm really excited about this class because it's directly an offshoot from my dissertation research. And I just love what I do. And I love being able to bring compassion and grace into the classroom. I love being able to bring my Hood Rat Scholarship, which I will do a video on later to explain what Hood Rat Scholarship is. But I love being able to show up and show these students that, you know, you can have a professor that cares about you. You can have a good experience in your college class. You can learn stuff and have discussions about popular culture and still feel smart, because sometimes people try to, you know, shit on us who teach like discussion-based classes, but like my students are brilliant. Okay, and the discussions be popping. So that is like my journey of being a professor. I started in 2016. It is now 2014, Lord have mercy. It is 2024, so it has almost been a decade since I have been teaching college students, and I am so excited to see how they engage with my new class this fall, and I'm excited to see how my hip hop feminism class continues to grow and continues to make a name for itself. And I am just excited to be able to teach, because I love teaching. I love being in the classroom. I love being able to open the minds of students and get them to critically think about things that they may not have thought about before. And just watching them learn and their brains expand is like really exciting. So that is my professorship journey.